Why's a pretty blonde girl here?
Haruka is a high school lonely loser who have no girlfriend in his entire life, just like some of you. But one day, he isekai'd to another world with 69 useless abilities, which made him useless again in this world. But he also got infinite luck in this life, so he uses to rizz up the baddies one by one, and now his whole mansion is filled up with lots of baddies.
But
Haruka is sitting in class, total loner, even the nerds of the class don't want him. Also, he is invisible for girl, just like you.
Oh shit!
Out of nowhere, a magic circle shows up and starts dragging the class into another world. Haruka freaks out because he is a V card holder, and he don't want to die without using his joystick. So he runs up to the roof to dodge it, but the summon still grabs him even though he split from everyone. He wakes up in this white space, where an old geezer is waiting to hand out skills. There are boards covered in powers like became Rizz Lord, became a Spider-Man, and also many more. Since Haruka came in late, his classmates already took every good option like sleep with anyone ability, which is my favorite guys. Now, only trash skills are left, just like him. Haruka grabs the old geezer, yelling at him, and the guy gets annoyed, eats him into the new world with those useless abilities, leaving him stuck there. Haruka looks down and notices a small bag on his waist, one of his skills. Inside, it can hold tons of stuff, but it's already packed with junk that looks useless, just like him.
Emotional damage!
As he's about to open his status screen, a new window pops up telling him to roll a die and bet on one stat. He throws it, hits the best result, and the system lets him pick what to raise. Haruka chooses luck, and that value shoots straight to the max. He's alone in a strange world, but instead of worrying about his classmates, he decides to focus on how to live here. Using his appraisal type skill, he checks nearby plants and mushrooms, figures out what's actually useful, and tosses everything into the bag. While wandering around, he finds a cave, makes sure there are no monsters inside, and uses it as his base for the night. The next morning, a bunch of goblins shows up. Haruka hides and sees their level is higher than his, but he knows nobody else is coming to save him. He forces himself to fight, channels magic into his staff, and beats them down one by one. After the fight, he heads back to the cave and opens his status again, seeing his stats have climbed a lot. The next day, he decides to push them even higher. He activates a skill that buffs his body, then goes out to test his speed and strength by taking out more goblins. Over the following days, his numbers keep rising while he cleans up the cave and turns it into a proper hideout. What he wants most is beating his meat.
What?
Sorry, I mean he wants to eat meat. When he spots a rabbit, he hunts it, catches it, and gets ready to eat. Right before he takes a bite, he senses people approaching. It's his classmates. Among them, he feels Toka nearby, his childhood crush and class rep. He wants to go to her, but stops himself and decides that in this world he's better off staying a lone wolf if he wants to climb to the top. Haruka slips into some bushes as the bullies walk past. Haruomi notices the rustling and comes over to check. But just as he reaches out, the rabbit bursts from the grass and startles them. They laugh and walk off, while Haruka relaxes, glad they never spotted him. Curious, he follows them from a distance and finds them hanging out on a beach. He listens in, hoping for useful info, but they only crack crude jokes about other girl, like which have best footballs.
Stop it. Get some help.
From this, Haruka realizes they barely understand their own abilities and are forcing Tanaka, the nerdy one, to act as their guide. After a while, they head back to the camp where the rest of the class is staying. Haruka turns away and goes back to his cave, choosing to stay on his own instead of joining them. The next day, Haruka is in his cave cooking mushrooms for dinner when he spots something weird on his status screen. His loner type skill has leveled up just from staying away from everyone, but his total level is still stuck at 3 because a pile of junk skills won't grow at all. Annoyed that he's stuck with that setup, he finishes eating quietly and gets ready to sleep. Before he can lie down, noises echo from outside, so he steps out, expecting the usual delinquents. Instead, he sees the brainy kids from class struggling against a group of goblins. A quick appraisal shows their stats and abilities are way higher than his, which hits his pride, and he turns away, ready to leave them to their own fight. Then, he notices another bunch of goblins sneaking around to hit them from behind. Remembering, they used to be his friends back at school. He can't just walk off, so Haruka rushes in, smashes the ambushers, and ends up saving the group. They thank him while barely standing, and he guides them back to his cave. Inside, they're shocked by how safe and organized his hideout is. Haruka, uncomfortable with all the praise, sits down anyway and listens as they start explaining what happened after the class arrived in this world. They tell him that when everyone first landed here, most of the class panicked and didn't understand anything, while only the anime-obsessed group figured out they'd been thrown into another world. While Tuka, the class rep, tried to calm everyone, goblins attacked. Most students froze, but the geeks stepped up to protect the others, and the jocks joined in, letting them win the fight. After that, Tuka gathered everyone by a river, set up a camp, and assigned jobs so they could live there. With the nerdy group's knowledge, food, shelter, and basic survival went smoothly for a while. Then some classmates stopped taking things seriously. The girls and the rowdy crowd ignored their duties and spent their time messing around, leaving Toka, the geeks, and a few serious students doing most of the work, from building shelters to finding food. The geeks eventually uncovered a nasty plan. The delinquents wanted to use puppet-type skills to control Toka and the girls and make them do whatever they wanted. Guys, I also wanted the same kind of power, the geeks warned her immediately. After hearing that, Toka started training hard and raised her level quickly. When the bullies finally tried to carry out their scheme and force her into something disgusting, her new strength completely crushed them. Shamed and exposed, the delinquents were kicked out of the camp, and everyone cut ties with them. Later, those same guys came back furious and picked a fight with the geek squad. Their reckless battle set the campsite on fire and injured a lot of classmates. In the chaos afterward, the girls and other students unfairly blamed the geeks for the disaster. So, fed up with being treated like villains after saving everyone, they walked away from the camp and wandered until they ran into Haruka. Seeing how exhausted they are, Haruka offers them shelter, cooks a big mushroom meal to lift their spirits, and spends the next few days with them, unexpectedly enjoying their company even though he's a loner. Eventually, they decide they can't stay in the forest forever and plan to head to the nearest city to register as adventurers. They invite Haruka to come along and rebuild some of their old bond from school, but he turns them down, choosing to stick to his own path. They leave reluctantly for the city while he stays alone in his cave. After the nerds head off toward the city, Haruka stays behind in his cave, even though the thought of that place keeps poking at his brain. Still, he decides he should check on the rest of the class before thinking about going there himself. On the way to the old camp, a kobold jumps him. The fight leaves him banged up, but he manages to win and keeps walking. When he reaches the campsite, it's completely empty. Everyone's gone. Figuring they packed up and moved, he flips on his tracking skill and follows the freshest footprints leading deeper into the forest. Before long, he runs into a group of girls. Caught off guard, he pretends he's just out looking for food, but they sprint over and start begging him for his big pipe to drink some milk.
Lord have mercy.
Sorry guys, I mean they start begging him for help. Tsukiho explains they're trying to find the nerds so they can apologize, now that they finally get how much they were relying on them. Haruka flat out tells them the nerds have already left and probably aren't coming back. He calls them out for how they acted, reminding them it was the nerds doing the monster fights, collecting supplies, and keeping everyone alive. The girls lower their heads and ask Haruka to at least teach them how to survive until they can catch up to the group. Their desperate begging accidentally triggers his servitude skill, and the girls get bound to him. They start helping out like emotionless NPCs, which honestly creeps him out. When he notices Tsukiho's arm is injured, he hands her a healing potion. But with her brain basically switched off, she just pours it on him instead of healing herself. He doesn't even get mad. His thoughts drift to Toka and how she'd absolutely chew him out for turning classmates into his followers. Right on cue, Toka shows up. She spots him instantly and rushes over, but Haruka is still stuck in his own head and barely reacts until she yells straight into his ear. That finally snaps him out of it, and he actually looks at her. Somewhere else in the forest, the bullies are gathered around a campfire, scheming. Their plan is to wait until someone comes to save the girls, then jump that person and take the girls for themselves. Back with Haruka, he calls Toka class rep, which annoys her, because to her, he's also her childhood friend, not just some random student. Before he can say anything else, more girls from class show up and crowd around him. He has no clue how to tell them he accidentally slapped a servitude effect on the first group. When he finally explains, Toka demands to know how he even pulled that off. The others stare at him with straight-up disgust. Annoyed, Haruka tries to walk away, but Taka and the rest block him from leaving. She then releases Tsukiho from the effect, checks that the girls are okay, and has them explain everything themselves. Haruka gets told to stay put, so he shuffles off to the side and decides to focus on his carpentry magic. He tries to use it to make a basement under his home, but the spell misfires and leaves him stuck halfway in the ground. Tuka pulls him out and thanks him, assuming he stepped in for the girls out of kindness. Haruka shrugs and says he's going back home, which throws her off, since home shouldn't exist in this forest. He explains that in his spare time, he went full grind mode and built himself a mansion. The girls overhear that he has real rooms and food stored, so they huddle up and whisper. After a moment, Toka returns, flustered, and asks if he'll let them stay there. Just imagining a bunch of girls sleeping under his roof scrambles his brain, but he still can't bring himself to say no, because guy's only useless mind nerd can say no to her.
Stay hard!
On the way, he walks so fast they struggle to keep up. They notice how he turns right before every corner or fork in the path, like he can read the terrain, and wonder what hidden skills he's using. When they reach the place, Haruka lets them in. The girls are stunned by how big and clean the mansion is, and are just glad to be done with their flimsy tents. While he's showing them around, they find the bathroom. One look at the bathtub and they instantly rush in together to soak. Haruka, doing everything he can not to collapse from embarrassment, because his little pipe going bigger and bigger, spins around and slips outside to pitch a tent for himself instead. Alone for a bit, he finally relaxes, but it doesn't last. Tuka soon comes over and sits by his tent under the night sky. Haruka thinks maybe this moment, when I lose my V card. But she thanks him again and admits that being class rep has been rough since the nerds and the others left. Haruka tells her not to stress. Those guys were always ready for this kind of world anyway. Knowing he's alive, feeding the girls, and surviving on his own makes her feel lighter. After saying what she needed to, she heads back inside and leaves him to rest. Even then, Haruka has trouble sleeping with his classmates using his mansion. His mind won't settle, assuming maybe I'm also sleeping with them.
What do you mean by that?
At sunrise, he crawls out of his tent and spots a girl waiting outside. For a second, he misreads the situation and thinks maybe this is my lucky day, but it's just Chika who was told to wake him up. Chika leans in, a little stiff and awkward, and tells him the morning meal's done. They're having grilled fish with mushrooms on the side. Haruka is instantly awake the second he hears fish. He bolts out of the tent and starts eating, happy that, for once, it's not just mushrooms again. While they eat, he admits he's never been able to catch fish himself since they're too fast and slippery. Curious, he asks how the girls pulled it off. Tuka brings over Amame, who zaps the river with a small burst of lightning and casually stuns the fish so they can scoop them up. Haruka watches, wide-eyed. Amame shows off again, and he quickly experiments by trapping the electricity in a box-shaped construct and then releasing it back into the water. The system recognizes it, and he gains a new elemental type skill. He tells Toka that all the abilities he got at the start were basically the leftovers after everyone else chose the strong ones. On paper, his build was trash, but now that he's actually using them in weird ways, they're turning out way more helpful than anyone would have guessed. While the girls splash around and enjoy the river, Toka lays out her next goal. She wants to guide everyone to the closest town. Haruka shuts that down for the moment, saying they'll just get wiped if they walk in weak. They need to grind first. He offers to coach them, gathers them in the forest, and checks their status one by one. To his annoyance, the lowest level among them is 16. While he's only 7, he still sends them to fight nearby kobolds, thinking it'll be an easy warm-up. Instead, they get stomped. Completely confused at how high-level girls can lose like that, he sets up a huge tent so they can regroup, talk through what went wrong, and rethink their approach. Watching how serious they are about improving, he ends up genuinely impressed. That night, Chika comes to him alone. She apologizes for how she acted that morning, admitting she was basically poking at him to see what kind of guy he was. Then she opens up about how badly the guys in class have treated her, and how hard it's been. Her honesty hits him, and he tells her to be the one to wake him up every day from now on with a special kind of a service. Then he calling her Fish Girl because of the river, making sure it's clearly a nickname, not an insult. The next morning, he wakes up in a good mood, ready for more fish. While he's eating, he overhears the girls arguing they're fired up to challenge the kobolds again. Tuka scolds them, insisting they should fully master fighting goblins before jumping back to stronger enemies. Even so, Haruka agrees to put them through more training. Some of the girls fake injuries or exhaustion to dodge the hard work, But others, like Chika and Toka, dive into every practice fight with real effort. After several days of drills, bruises, and retries, the group takes on the kobolds again, and this time they win. Haruka feels the tension leave his shoulders. Knowing they can actually handle themselves now, he starts thinking he might finally be able to go back to being a proper loner. But before that thought settles, Toka asks him straight up to come with them to town. He hesitates, torn between wanting to stay solo and not wanting to abandon them. In the end, he can't say no. They get ready to move out. The girls watch, amazed, as Haruka and Chika keep stuffing gear, food, and supplies into his bottomless pouch like it's nothing. Tuka gives a short speech, telling everyone to be ready not just for life in town, but also to apologize properly to the nerds they wronged before. The mood lifts, and they start walking with real excitement. At one point on the road, the girls wander ahead in a noisy pack, leaving Haruka and Toka walking side by side behind them. Haruka quietly tells her to stay ready for whatever might happen, his voice calm but serious. Somewhere else in the forest, one of their classmates is sprinting for his life, branches whipping past. The shadowy man chases him down. The boy dives into a hollow tree and begs for mercy, admitting he has no useful skills. The man ignores his pleading, grabs his throat, and slowly chokes him to death. Back with Haruka, he gets a bad feeling that the bullies or something worse are going to target the girls, so he decides the best way to protect them is to guide them out of the forest as fast as possible. While they're walking, they run into an orc. Haruka knows from the nerd's advice that orcs are way easier to deal with using magic instead of close combat, so he tells the girls to watch carefully and learn. He moves in with boosted speed and durability, darting around to confuse the monster. But when the orc closes the distance faster than he expects, he panics and cracks it on the back of the head with a physical blow, knocking it out cold. He's honestly impressed with his own strength, since he thought orcs could only realistically be beaten with magic skills. The girls, however, just stare at him like he lied to their faces. He promised a magic demonstration and ended up clubbing the thing instead. Then another orc appears, determined to at least show them one proper example. Haruka blasts it in the face with fire magic and takes it down instantly. Even after that, the girls are pissed. He defeated both orcs so easily that they feel like they didn't actually learn anything from watching him fight. By evening, the girls have set up tents and a campfire so everyone can crash after the long walk. While they're chatting and resting, Toka notices Haruka off by himself, busy with something in the dark. He's actually putting together a simple alarm trap using one of his so-called trash skills, so he'll know if anyone sneaks up on them at night. As he finishes it, he quietly admits to himself that these worthless abilities are starting to look pretty clutch. Not long after, the trap reacts someone's coming. Haruka tenses up, thinking the bullies finally caught up to them. But when the figures step into the firelight, it's the jocks. Haruka jokes that they must have shown up to flirt with the girls, but they say they came to talk to him. He keeps clowning around, throwing in more jokes, then finally asks why they're being so secretive about it. They explain that after everything that happened with the bullies and those creepy puppet skills, they don't know who they can trust anymore. There's a skill, even worse than puppetry, they say something stronger and scarier. Haruka immediately realizes they're talking about hijack, and for a moment, he pretends to be some evil mastermind, acting like he's the one with it. The jocks don't flinch, they know Haruka's not the type to mess people up like that. They admit they're actually worried the bullies might have that skill. Haruka drops the act and reveals that he himself has servitude, which does freak them out a bit, because in his hands that could get really serious, really fast. Still, they tell him they just wanted him to know what they've figured out, and promise they'll protect the girls and the others if the bullies show up again. They feel like they owe everyone that much. They walk off, not realizing Tuka has heard the whole conversation from nearby. The more she finds out, the more uneasy she gets. The next morning, Haruka tells everyone to get ready so they can continue toward town. Before they move out, Tuka stops him, saying there's something she needs to talk about. Before she can get the words out, Haruka calmly says he already knows she's the one holding the hijack skill. Tuka explains what it actually does. It can steal other people's skills by killing them, which is exactly why it terrifies her. She says she would never use it like that. Haruka tells her he isn't scared of her at all, and that the nerds weren't either. If anything, everyone's just relieved that she's the one with it and not some psycho bully. Hearing that, Toka starts crying again, this time out of relief, and Haruka points out how much she's been tearing up lately. She fires back that most of those tears are because of him and his reckless behavior, which leaves him stunned. As he turns away, she adds that, even so, she's grateful for everything he's done for her and the others. They eventually get moving, and along the road, Haruka sells some fruit juice he made. One of the girls wants it so badly she almost tries something embarrassing to get a discount, but Toka shuts that down instantly. Later, they reach a river. Haruka tells Tuka to stay with the group and keep an eye on the girls while he goes scout ahead, but in reality, he just wants to test how far he can push his magic. He uses magic infusion and stacks a bunch of his other skills, boosting his speed until he's basically zipping through the air and then, for a short moment, actually flying above the trees. From up high, he gets a clear look at the river and forest layout, but his power drains fast. He starts losing altitude, falling slower at first, then harder as his aura and health drop. He slams into the ground and ends up battered and barely hanging on. By the time he drags himself back to the group, it's already midnight. The girls are worried, but Haruka just tells Tuka he was out scouting the area and picked up some new tricks along the way, which is his excuse for all the bruises. The next morning, Haruka and the girls run into all kinds of chaos. On the road, stray orcs, people getting split from the group, random splashing and water games. But after all that mess, they finally break out of the forest. The wall of trees slowly thins, and in front of them, it's just open land and soft green slopes as far as they can see. After being boxed in by trees for so long, the view hits the girls hard. They're half relieved, half amazed just standing there. While everyone's soaking it in, Haruka glances at his status and notices a new ability unlocked, Airwalk. Curious, he gives it a try and nearly freaks out when his foot doesn't fall. He's literally standing on nothing, stepping on the sky like it's solid. Tuka and the others just gape at him, totally speechless. Using that new trick, Haruka jogs forward above the ground, moving ahead to check what's over the next ridges. In the distance, he spots a group of locals fighting for their lives against a bunch of beasts. His first wave of excitement crashes quick. This is dangerous, and jumping and blindly could get everyone killed. He heads back and tells Tuka what he saw, saying they should stay out of it. For all they know, those people could be bandits who'd rob them the second the monsters are gone. Tuka listens, then grabs his hand and says she'd rather face the risk with everyone than ignore people in trouble. Haruka can't help smiling. That's exactly the kind of answer he expected from her. He tells her he'll back her up and protect the group, and the girls calm down a bit hearing him say it. Haruka then stacks Airwalk with his other buffs, basically turning it into scuffed flight. He launches himself toward the battlefield but accidentally drags Toka along with him, like she's hooked to his magic. She says she can literally feel herself being pulled by his power. Before he can fix his speed, he rockets straight into the middle of the monster pack, crashes hard, and Toka gets knocked out cold from the impact. With no time to panic, Haruka stands up and introduces himself to the people they just crash-landed next to. To his surprise, they answer in a language he can fully understand. They're a guild squad, there's a captain, an elf woman, and a few other female adventurers. While they finish clearing out the remaining beasts and patch up the area, Haruka hands over some stamina-boosting mushrooms he'd gathered and cooked. They eat them, genuinely impressed, and explain that stuff like this is rare around here, which catches him off guard. In return, they tell him they're out on a guild job to make money. When Toka finally wakes up, she notices Haruka stiffening up, his eyes darting toward the pretty elf and the other women, a little jealousy flaring for no real reason. It fades once the girls regroup around him and drag his attention back. The guild party then guides Haruka's group the rest of the way, and, after a while, the town of Amui comes into view. The girls freak out in a good way, cheering and sprinting ahead. After all that time in the forest, seeing real buildings and walls feels like reaching the end of a long game level. Back in the woods, though, the bullies are wrapping up their own grinding session. They've powered up and are getting ready to chase after the girls. One of them suggests the leader use his puppet ability again to force the girls to obey. Their leader loves the idea and starts planning how to go after the nerds, and the girls both completely unaware that the jocks are nearby listening, disgusted and worried by what they're hearing. In Amui, the girls finally get to relax a bit. They immediately want to blow all their energy and money on cute clothes and random accessories. Tuka has to pull them back to reality and remind them they need basics first if they want to survive here. Haruka watches them wandering around town, chatting with locals, and finally starting to feel safe. For a moment, it hits him that his escort mission might actually be over. That peace doesn't last, though Tuka blows her whistle and calls everyone back together like a pro leader. He's honestly impressed by how smoothly she handles the group. Once they're all gathered, she explains what they'll be doing next. First, they're going to trade all the items they've collected at the Adventurers Guild. Next, they'll officially register there as adventurers. After that, they plan to use whatever money they earn to pay for a proper inn so everyone can rest. And finally, once they've settled in, they'll start searching the town to track down the missing nerds. With that plan laid out, it doesn't feel like their journey is ending. It feels like everything is just shifting into the next stage. Tsukiho wants to look for the nerds right away, but Taka sticks to her plan and marches everyone to the Adventurers Guild. Inside, the guild master appears quickly and calls Haruka upstairs. He tells Taka to start the girls' registration and goes up, expecting trouble under the stares of older adventurers, but the guild master simply thanks him for helping the squad and lets him go. Back in the hall, Haruka notices a trader buying loot. He listens to the rules, then pours out a huge pile of gemstones, leaving the dealer stunned before she agrees to buy them and promises payment the next day. Soon after, Tuka and the girls arrive, and Tuka urges Haruka to register too. When staff check the girls' status screens, they're shocked by how high their levels are. Tuka explains that Haruka led them safely to Amui and says he'll be great once he's official. Haruka tries to sign up but finds he's still one level short. He asks for an exception, yet the clerk explains that his level only qualifies him as a trainee, and that a real adventurer starts much higher, so Taka is treated as their leader for now. Following the guild's recommendation, the group heads to a nearby inn that looks suspiciously like a love hotel. The owner insists it isn't, so they stay there anyway. That night, while the girls rest, Haruka misses the forest, and Tsukiho quietly worries about where the nerds ended up. In the morning, Haruka meets the trader again. She says the guild can't afford to buy all his stones at once, so the guild master sets up payment over time. And Haruka suddenly has a huge amount of money. Tuka is thrilled and tells the girls to buy real equipment and supplies instead of wasting cash. Meanwhile, Gatek pulls Haruka aside and hints at a special place. Haruka expects some sketchy massage spot but ends up at a magic item shop. He spends time testing gear until he finds a necklace that can enchant items, reminding him of the villager set Gatek gave him. Excited, he keeps experimenting until Toka bursts in, angry he was gone so long. Startled, he fumbles a mistletoe charm and enchants every piece of gear he tried. The shopkeeper insists he buy all of it, and Haruka's new fortune disappears in one go, leaving him broke again. The next morning, Haruka wakes up completely broke, stuck with nothing but the enchanted stuff he accidentally bought. Still salty about blowing all his money, he starts thinking about ditching Amui, grabbing more gemstones, and finally doing some real adventuring. The problem is, he doesn't have a permit to travel, and after last night's chaos, he's pretty sure Toka wouldn't let him walk out of the city even if he asked, so he goes full sneaky mode. He throws on his invisibility cloak, slips out of the inn, and creeps through the streets while feeling guilty the whole time. When he reaches the gate, the guards aren't even paying attention, so he uses airwalk to climb up and sneak over the wall. Just as he's about to pull it off, the girls spot him mid-climb. He flinches, loses balance, slams his crotch into the stone, and drops back down in pain. As he recovers, he realizes it's the sporty girls from class watching him. One of them isn't there, though, so he uses his skills to locate her. He finds her in a really bad spot, half undressed in public, trying on outfits where everyone could see. He and the others rush her way to stop her from causing a scene. She totally misreads the situation, thinks they're being mean, and bursts into tears. Haruka ends up giving her clumsy compliments just to calm her down, and that whole escape run ends with him still stuck in town. The day after that, the girls head out on their first proper guild job, leaving Haruka alone at the inn for once. He doesn't waste the chance. Cloaked again, he walks straight past the gate with no issues and finally steps outside the walls. The fresh air and open road feel amazing, and he decides to head back toward his forest base. On the way, he spots a carriage being attacked by bandits. His body moves before he thinks. A blade comes for him. He dodges and whacks back with his fire-boosted cane, throwing flames and knocking them off rhythm. The bandits laugh at him for having no job and a low level while flaunting their flashy weapon techniques, but Haruka can see their burning stamina way too fast. He keeps avoiding their strikes and letting them waste energy until they basically drop from exhaustion on their own. A young noblewoman steps out of the damaged carriage and introduces herself as Marielle. She thanks him for helping, but casually points out that he didn't actually finish any of the bandits off himself. He gives his name, and she explains she's the daughter of a local lord. Worried the attackers might come back, she begs him to escort her, promising to repay him later. He doesn't really want to get dragged back into city stuff, but he ends up agreeing. While they ride, she asks where he's from. Haruka starts ranting about his hometown, calling it a trashy place that wouldn't let him do what he wanted. He trashes the Lord too, saying he's probably some useless, balding old guy who has no business running a town. Marielle suddenly starts crying, and admits that useless old guy is her father. Haruka freezes, realizing his big escape attempt has just turned into a direct trip right back to Amui. Somewhere else, away from the road, the tension between the bullies and the jocks finally snaps. The bullies tell them to back off and let them deal with the class rep, but the jocks refuse to move aside. A fight breaks out. Just as the bully leader is about to land a hit, a dark figure appears behind him and drives a blade into his back, stabbing him over and over. The other bullies rush the stranger and get stomped almost instantly. The jocks try to run, but the man catches them without effort and blocks their path. When they finally see his face clearly, they're stunned. They know exactly who he is. After his failed getaway, Haruka ends up riding back to Amui next to Princess Marielle. She brings him to her family manor, huge doors, shiny floors, portraits everywhere. It's fancy, sure, but all he can think about is his cave, and the busted little mansion he built in the forest. When he quietly drifts toward the exit, Marielle steps in his way. Annoyed he'd try to dip before she can properly thank him for saving her from the bandits. That night, he's parked at a long table stacked with nothing but meat. Haruka forgets about manners and just tears into the food. While he's busy inhaling steak, Marielle pushes over a pouch of money and a town pass that lets him go in and out of Amui even without any ID. He mumbles a quick thanks, with his mouth still full. She glances at her elegant dress and styled hair, realizing he cares way more about the food than about her or the reward, and her mood quietly drops. The next day, he tells the girls he got invited to the Lord's place. When they ask why, he just shrugs and says it's because he's built different, nothing deep. In reality, he's already decided he's going to slip out of Amui on his own. The girls head out on a quest, and before leaving, Toka warns him not to pull anything stupid and says she still needs him around. The second they're gone, he feels fired up. Today is escape day in his head. He writes a short note to Toka saying he's leaving and not to worry, then strolls to the gate and flashes his new pass at the guard. Once they let him through, he heads straight back toward the forest, not stressing about bandits anymore. After walking for hours, he spots the river he used to fish at, low-level goblins and kobolds wandering nearby, and, weirdly, a nasty-looking orc pacing close to the edge of the woods. Since orcs normally stick to the deeper areas, he knows something's off, but one hit from his fire cane drops it and he keeps moving. Before long, he notices blood on the ground. Worried it might be from the nerds or the jocks, he activates his tracking skill and follows the trail until he finds the jocks collapsed, barely conscious and covered in blood. Haruka quickly uses his mushroom-based healing potions on them, refusing to let them die there. After a while, they come to, and the first thing their leader asks about is the girls. Haruka tells them the girls are safe in Amui, living comfortably thanks to the jocks, stepping in to protect them from the bullies. Then they tell him the bullies are already dead. It wasn't the jocks who took them out, but a single man who overwhelmed both sides on his own. Haruomi says that Guy is targeting Toka specifically because she has the hijack skill. Haruka is stunned. He thought only he and the nerds knew about that. The jocks offer to team up and help him fight this mystery man, but Haruka turns them down. Even though he knows their help would make things easier, he chooses to face the threat alone, still clinging to his dream of living quietly as a loner. Haruka figures the mystery guy will just follow that bloody trail through the forest, which means sooner or later they'll run into each other one-on-one. Worried about Tuka, he orders Haruomi and the others to drag themselves back to Amui and guard her and the rest of the girls. Once they're gone, he actually feels that old rush of being completely on his own again, but this time he knows he can't just vibe. If he wants any chance against the man who wrecked the jocks, he has to grind levels fast. That night, he hunts goblins under the moonlight, blasting them with magic and dropping them way too easily for enemies that outlevel him. The fact that they fold so fast makes him suspicious, so he pushes further into the woods. A goblin king steps out, and this one actually hits hard. Haruka dodges around its swings, knowing he can't just run, then pumps multiple buffs into his cane and brings it down in a clean, brutal strike, slicing the thing apart. For a second, he just stares at his weapon, realizing all those trash skills he picked up are turning into something insane. Then the air behind him shifts. A much larger goblin steps out, a goblin emperor, level 50, and Haruka feels his stomach drop when he compares that to his own pathetic level 9. With nothing else to rely on, he stacks every minor skill he has into one massive enchantment for his cane. New effects flicker across the weapon as they rush each other. He manages to land a solid hit that actually wounds the emperor, but it's not even close to enough. The monster heals itself, slashes him, and starts chaining weapon techniques that nearly finish him off. Haruka refuses to drop, thinking about the girls and the jocks depending on him. He keeps forcing his body to move, dodging and countering again and again as the night drags on. By the time the sun comes up, he finally lands the last blow and the emperor falls. A notification pops. He's level 11 now. Exhausted, he limps back to his cave, checks his status screen, and feels a small wave of relief at seeing how much stronger he's gotten, even though he still isn't at that emperor's level. All it tells him is that he needs to keep pushing before the real threat shows up. That evening, as he's about to step into his cave, he senses someone watching. A hooded figure stands nearby. Haruka calls out, and the stranger drops the act. It's Tanaka. The quiet nerd just casually admits he's been pulling strings the whole time, using the bullies to split the class and stir chaos. He sounds annoyed that the jocks showed up instead of Toka. She's clearly the one he wanted to lure in. When he says he'll just head for her next, Haruka steps in his path and tells him a loner can still have something to protect. Tanaka, interested, agrees to fight him properly since he's already wiped out everyone else. Back in Amui, the girls are searching the town, tense and worried. One of them tries to calm Toka down, saying Haruka clearly went off to do something important. He literally wrote in his letter that he was going to find the jocks. The following day, they return from a gemstone run and nearly choke when they see Haruomi and the others alive inside the city walls. Tuka instantly realizes that if the jocks are here, Haruka must be alone in the forest. Haruomi explains that Haruka found them bleeding out and then chose to stay behind to fight for their sake. Toka wants to sprint out of town immediately, but Haruomi stops her and says Haruka swore he'd take on Tanaka himself and that they should trust him. Out in the woods, Tanaka stands at the end of Haruka's cane, feeling insulted just by the way it's pointed at him. He calmly explains that back in that white room, he made sure every leftover skill was garbage, so whoever came late would be stuck with nothing, and now he wants to see how far those useless skills can really go. He unleashes his power. As Haruka braces, Tanaka activates a debuff ability, Tweak, that quietly drags down his stats. Haruka dodges the first rush of attacks, but he can feel his body slowing, getting heavier. Tanaka doesn't let up, hurling elemental techniques one after another. Haruka slips past all of them, which actually impresses him. Despite Haruka's loser reputation, Tanaka admits he genuinely respects how far he's gotten with such a scuffed build. Haruka takes the compliment and, when asked, says he's been suspicious from the start. A nerd suddenly hanging out with bullies never added up. Tanaka laughs and says he's been setting things up since day one. When someone else grabbed Hijack, he picked Tweak instead, a power that lets him quietly push people in the direction he wants. As they talk, Tanaka pins Haruka in place with an elemental combo and then fires a massive flame beam straight at his chest. Confident it's over, he's stunned when the fire gets sucked into Haruka instead of burning him. The mistletoe charm Haruka broke back in the magic shop absorbs the blast. Haruka uses that moment to rush in, but Tanaka blocks with a sword and mocks him for thinking that would be enough. Then Tanaka goes full anime boss, pulling out weapon after weapon like a mix of Gilgamesh and Urza, and unleashes a barrage of blades that sends Haruka crashing to the ground. Even cornered and cut up, Haruka drags himself back to his feet, watching Tanaka's movements and calling him out on a copy-type ability that steals other people's powers. Tanaka grins and admits that his plan was to swipe Tuka's Hijack, beat her, and erase any classmates with special skills so he could sit at the top. Facing that absurd advantage and feeling his energy drain, Haruka slumps his shoulders, acting like he's finally broken and ready to surrender. Tanaka lunges in for the last stab, but Haruka slips aside and straightens up like the beating was an act. He says he only pretended to be weak to test the limits of Tanaka's copycat, and now he knows how far it goes. Tanaka hates that the loner reject figured him out, but before he can answer, Haruka rushes in and knocks him flat. Haruka still feels danger. Tanaka's grin doesn't fade. He suddenly blurs around him, bragging about a move above every other skill, a one-hit kill. The world goes black as Haruka's soul is ripped out and his body falls. Tanaka grinds his boot into Haruka's head, laughing as if it's over. Then a voice calls him. Tanaka turns and sees Haruka on his feet again. The trash skills he mocked kept him alive, a passive that wipes status effects, canceling instant death, luck maxed so far that guaranteed results can fail, and a dummy skill that lets him act like a puppet outside Tweak's control. Tanaka snaps and hurls blades and elements, but Haruka dodges until Tanaka drops to his knees. Tanaka insists his plans are flawless, but Haruka says this world doesn't follow Earth's neat rules, and that all his perfect math missed one variable: him. Haruka moves in to finish it, but Tanaka fires a long-range control strike into his back and smashes him down again. Haruka can barely move, yet he drags himself up, light gathering as he squeezes every buff and enchantment left. He charges and beats Tanaka down until the guy breaks and wets himself in fear. Haruka stops with his cane raised and tells him everyone else has been fighting just to live, while Tanaka treated this world like a toy. The useless build he forced on Haruka is exactly what turned the fight. Haruka triggers the ridiculous finisher name he gave his combo, and finally drops Tanaka for good. The rush fades, and the dummy effect slips away. One mistake, and he'd have stayed dead. Thinking of Toka and the others, he staggers a few steps and collapses. That's when the nerds find him, heal him, and apologize for being late, saying they started searching after seeing how worried everyone was in town. Haruka survives and is brought back to Amui. This time, his classmates cheer when he walks in. He stands there, stunned, until Haruomi steps up and slaps his hand in a high five. The gals bow to the nerds and apologize for dumping work on them and blaming them at the first camp, admitting the class only survived because of them. With everyone finally on decent terms, Haruka thinks about slipping away to his cave and going back to his loner routine. In his mind, they'll be fine without him. Before he can vanish, Toka steps in front of him, angry and relieved at once. She says she and the girls still need to scold him for trying to disappear, then hugs him tight and admits how scared she was he might not come back. Haruka realizes he made her cry again and apologizes, and this time her tears are from relief, because he kept his promise and helped their broken class smile together. Early the next day, Haruka jolts awake from a strange dream about a girl in a skull mask sitting alone in a dungeon, waiting for someone who never shows up. He shakes it off and walks to the Adventurers Guild, where the nerds wave him over as new adventurers. Grinning, they say they're heading into another dungeon to hunt a rare item that can flip how people see them and boost their reputation. Haruka mocks them for chasing approval, but they fire back with their own jokes and then head out. With the nerds set and Tanaka gone, Haruka starts feeling like he doesn't have much of a role in town anymore. His mind drifts back to the cave and mansion he built in the forest, and he quietly thinks about slipping out and going back to living alone. Just as he's about to leave, Tuka cuts him off. Angry, she tears into him for trying to run again and warns that if her public lecture didn't fix him, she'll give him a private one next time, something that scares him more than any boss. Panicking, Haruka apologizes for being reckless, which earns him a rare small smile from her. To him, though, she's still more terrifying than Tanaka, especially after threatening to slice his precious parts into tiny pieces. He's stuck, wondering how he can fade out of town life without breaking her heart. Then he remembers what the nerds said about a dungeon item that can change how someone is seen. If he gets it, maybe no one will nag or lecture him again. Elsewhere, in the Lord's mansion in Amui, Marielle serves tea to her father and asks why he won't rest. He explains that as the ruler of a frontier town, he can't relax when monster attacks are increasing and merchants are avoiding the roads. Their talk is cut short when a dungeon guard rushes in, reporting a monster horde on the way. Marielle hurries to the guild to spread the warning. The place explodes into motion as adventurers gear up to defend the gates, while Tuka leaves the battle prep to the guild master and goes to check on the girls and on Haruka, who still worries her the most. Haruka is already marching down the road toward the closest dungeon by the time anyone thinks to look for him. On the way, a squad of orcs blocks the path. He treats them like a warm-up fight, wipes out the small fry without breaking a sweat, then squares up against their boss, an orc king. His fire-boosted cane barely scratches it at first, but he just keeps swinging, stacking hits until the thing finally crashes to the ground. The whole orc showing up this close to town thing feels off, but he shrugs it away and keeps heading for the dungeon. When he reaches the entrance, he throws on his invisibility cloak and slips past the guards like a ghost. Inside, the pressure from the place is heavy, the air thick as he walks deeper, fixated on finding that rare item. He pops open chest after chest along the way, only to pull out useless junk every time. Annoyed, he realizes he doesn't actually know how this dungeon works at all. Then he remembers the shop owner back in town, who sometimes sells rare dungeon drops. That clue feels a lot more promising than wandering blind, so he bails, turns around, and heads back to Amui to get information instead. At the city gate, the atmosphere is tense. Adventurers are lined up and on edge, bracing for the orc army Marielle warned them about. Smoke rolls in, and a silhouette appears. Weapons come up only for everyone to realize it's just Haruka. Shuffling along half asleep, Tuka storms up and demands to know where he's been, shouting about the incoming orc attack. Haruka casually says he already smacked them all down on his way over, like some real-life whack-a-mole game. The girls and adventurers lose it, furious he handled the threat alone without telling anyone. Later, he gets called into the guild. Marielle and the guild master thank him properly for taking out the orcs, but the mood turns serious fast. They tear into him for diving into dungeons solo, and remind him that reckless behavior could trigger a monster stampede or worse. Both of them ask him, almost begging, to quit doing things that dangerous. Haruka reluctantly agrees to listen at least on the surface. That night in his room, he stews. Every time he tries to live quietly, more people start worrying about him. Now even Marielle and the guild master are treating him like someone they need to protect. If he wants that rare item and a chance to change how people see him, he figures he has to move fast. The next morning, he visits the shop. The merchant explains that what he's after is called the pheromone ring, a relic said to boost how others perceive your worth and charm. To get it, he'll have to reach floor 50 of the dungeon, clearing a boss on every level to move down. She also reveals the place actually goes as deep as floor 100 and warns him to pack recovery items and be properly ready. They don't notice the nerds lurking nearby, listening in. Later, at the inn, the nerds fill Toka and the girls in on Haruka's plan. Furious, she decides they'll drag him back if they have to, and the girls gear up to block him. When Haruka heads toward the dungeon again, Toka and the others cut him off. She demands the real reason he's going back. He lies on the spot, claiming he's after some Solomon ring that lets him talk to animals. None of them buy it for a second. Haruka bolts into the dungeon, and the girls charge after him, while the overwhelmed guards just watch as more and more people pour inside. Once he's in, Haruka sprints ahead, dead set on snatching the pheromone ring before anyone else can reach it. Tuka yells after him to slow down and watch for traps, but he brushes it off, bragging that his maxed out luck will protect him like plot armor. Seconds later, the floor gives way. The ground under him collapses and he drops. Tuka dives and catches his hand for a moment, but their grip slips and he falls into darkness. While plummeting, he hurriedly activates a skill that turns the surface below into something springy, letting him bounce instead of splatter. Weak, he looks around and realizes he's not on any of the normal floors. He's in some hidden layer under the known dungeon levels. Airwalk doesn't get him back up, but the dungeon itself seems to respond, granting him new exploration abilities, like sensing trap positions and reading rough layouts of the area. He pushes through a tight hallway, feeling weaker as the air gets thinner, until he opens a heavy door and a blast of wind slams into him. Beyond it stands the Dungeon Emperor. Meanwhile, Taka and the others try to chase him down through the dungeon, only to hit a teleportation portal that spits them back at the entrance over and over. The nerds explain, in a panic, that Haruka must have fallen below the mapped floors, into the domain of the Dungeon Emperor, the final boss of one of the oldest, nastiest dungeons out there. Fear spreads, but Chika reminds everyone how many times Haruka has jumped in to save them. Her words pull them together, and they steel themselves to find some way to help. Deep below, Haruka scans the Dungeon Emperor, but most of its data reads as unknown. It's basically a walking question mark. Even so, he rushes in and swings with a double strike. The Emperor swats it away like nothing, moving faster than he can track. Instead of breaking his spirit, that gap in power lights a fire in him. Haruka squares his shoulders, grips his cane tighter, and decides on the spot that he's going to beat the Dungeon Emperor no matter how insane the odds look. Back at the Lord's mansion, Marielle quietly pours tea for her dad, and admits she's worried that something worse than a simple orc raid is coming. He tells her that if things get bad, she needs to coordinate with the Adventurers Guild, and warns her that the situation around Amui is only going to get harsher from here. She hurries to the guild and reports the spike in monster activity. The guild master is already braced for bad news, but he's especially anxious about the dungeon, which is being guarded by one sketchy guy who's rumored to be spreading bogus info. Gaedic and the others step up and volunteer to watch the dungeon entrance themselves. As the guild master mutters about that weird kid and his crew, his nickname for Haruka, Toka, and the rest, Mariel gets a bad feeling in her stomach. Deep underground, Haruka is stuck facing the emperor of the dungeon and trying to figure out how to deal with something on a completely different level from anything he's fought before. To keep up, he boosts his movement skills and rushes in. But even with his speed cranked, the emperor's blade meets his cane like it's nothing, trading blows with him at insane velocity. At one point, Haruka gets a flash of himself getting skewered and dodges at the last second, realizing his lens-type skill is giving him tiny glimpses of what's about to happen. With that future peak plus his speed buff, he tells himself he can't afford even one screw-up if he wants to stay alive. He keeps swinging, over and over, but the emperor slips around every strike like it's casually sparring with him. Eventually, Haruka starts to slow down, his body running out of gas, and that's when the emperor's blade ends up at his throat. It doesn't cut, though. As the fight drags on, he notices something important. Unlike other monsters that are clearly out for blood, this thing doesn't actually seem to want him dead. Instead of pure terror, he feels more fired up, like he's finally found a real hidden boss. Again, he looks for an opening, and again, the emperor could kill him but doesn't. That's when it clicks. Something dark is wrapped around this creature, forcing it to fight. Haruka jams his cane forward and starts draining that black sludge-like presence off of it. The pressure in the room shifts as he pulls the corruption out, peeling layer after layer away until the emperor is finally free of it. The sword clatters to the floor, and Haruka realizes it wasn't trying to win. It was waiting for someone to break its chains. But the darkness isn't done. It recoils, then dives back into the emperor's skeletal body. Haruka knows if he drags it out again and finishes the job, that's it. Instead, he does something insane. He just hugs the thing. He recognizes the same kind of loneliness he feels in himself and, without meaning to, triggers his servitude skill. The curse shatters completely, and the emperor becomes bound to him instead of the darkness. Haruka is confused about how to actually toggle that skill on or off, but he takes the win. When he clasps hands with the figure in front of him, its level drops all the way back down to 1, marking the new contract between them. The armor and bone form hide a single truth he didn't expect. The so-called Dungeon Emperor is actually a woman, and her name is Angelica. Haruka's first reaction is panic over how Toka is going to react to him picking up yet another girl. Then he remembers Angelica is literally a skeleton, and calms down a bit. He tries talking to her and opens a nearby door, only to come face to face with what used to be the original boss of the 100th floor, a suit of animated armor. Comparing the two, he realizes the armor is trying to kill him, while Angelica was just chained down, begging to be freed. He decides to cheat the system again. Using earth magic, he brings part of the ceiling down and air walks upward, breaking through to the floor above. That smash opens a path to the 99th floor, where a pair of raging minotaurs are waiting. They leap up in anger, crash through the weakened ceiling, and end up wrecking both themselves and the living armor in the chaos. Haruka and Angelica just stare at each other like, did that seriously work? Then he strolls over and taps what's left with his cane, calling it a win. Angelica points at the broken armor and motions that she wants to wear it. Once she puts it on, it looks way too big at first, but then it shrinks and shapes itself perfectly around her. When Haruka appraises it, he finds out it's cursed. Angelica goes off on him for not warning her, and her anger reminds him a bit too much of Tuka chewing him out. Meanwhile, Toka's group is stuck on floor 50, joking about what Haruka will brag about once they finally catch up with him. Their jokes die the second they open the next room, and see a huge cyclops with a single eye and 4 arms waiting inside. Back below, Haruka and Angelica climb to the 98th floor and run into a lich. His appraisal says it shrugs off both regular hits and normal magic, leaving him blocked. He thinks about dropping the ceiling again, then remembers his cane is the same one that purified Angelica. He swings once and deletes the lich in an instant. Next level up, a cloud of poisonous moths swarms him. He whips up a burning orb as bait, feeds it mana, and lets it explode, wiping the whole swarm. Moving on, he suddenly gets webbed in the face by sticky threads and realizes the bosses here are giant caterpillars. A quick earth spell encases them in a stone cylinder and crushes them without effort. On floor 95, the air feels heavy and wrong. Swords are scattered everywhere until a massive living blade rises up as the real boss. It's way stronger than he expected for this depth, and it doesn't move like a normal monster at all, which throws him off. Then he remembers he's not alone this time. He asks Angelica to handle it, Even at level 1, her presence is so intense the sentient sword actually trembles. She blitzes it and shatters it easily, leaving Haruka stunned. For the first time, he really feels like he has someone reliable at his side. Up above, Tuka's party is getting pushed to the edge by the four-armed Cyclops. Tired and running low on options, Tuka is about to call it, but Hinano and Haruomi stop her and ask what Haruka would do right now. They come up with a desperate plan. Haruomi convinces Toka to trust him, then launches himself straight at the Cyclops' eye while the girls rush around, yelling and attacking to split its attention. He forgets, a little too late, that the thing has extra arms. It smacks him out of the air, slamming him to the ground, but he's smiling, because his job was just to open a gap. Hinano steps in at the perfect moment and fires a clean shot right into its eye, finally bringing the giant down. Everyone cheers, and Toka realizes that, little by little, Haruka's influence has pulled their messy class back together and turned them into a real team. Higher up in the labyrinth, Haruka is still chewing through floor bosses. Around the 85th floor, the entire place starts to rumble, and he can feel monsters shifting all over the dungeon like something massive just woke up deeper down. Outside, the half-assed guard at the entrance watches people rushing into the dungeon in a big crowd, thinking they're crazy but not doing a thing to stop them. His mood flips when a tide of rats suddenly pours out of the entrance, followed by a squirming mass of slimy monsters pushing toward the surface. Finally freaking out, he sprints straight to the Adventurers Guild. There, he blurts everything to the Guildmaster and the adventurers gathered inside. The Guildmaster listens, then explains that the deepest layers must be overflowing, forcing monsters upward in a full-on breakout. Gatek and the others tense up, knowing Haruka's party is still down there. The Guildmaster pulls out old records and says the only way to shut this down is to beat the real final boss at the bottom. Gatek quietly asks who could even handle something like that. Marielle immediately thinks of Haruka, but doesn't want to gamble the entire town on one guy. Before anyone can argue, the guild hall shakes hard. The horde has already reached the outer walls. The Guildmaster switches into command mode, telling Gatek and the others to start evacuating civilians, while every adventurer who can still stand rushes to defend the front gate. It looks bad, but he also feels a fierce thrill. This might be the biggest fight of his life. Together, he, Gatek, and a swarm of guild members manage to push back the first wave. Marielle stares at the battlefield, stunned by how many monsters they've had to cut down just to survive the opening clash. The Guildmaster scowls. If Haruka's group had already taken out the last boss, this flood wouldn't still be going. Someone has to go inside, find him, and tell him how to finish it. When he and Gatek both turn to look at Marielle, she realizes they want her to go. She hesitates. She's never even stepped into a dungeon before, but seeing people dragged past on stretchers and hearing the yelling from the gate hardens her resolve. She agrees to enter and help save Amui. Meanwhile, deeper inside, Haruka keeps climbing. On one floor, he distracts a flock of hostile birds by tossing out a fish, then wipes them out while they fight over it. On the next level, he walks into a room flooded with water and instantly assumes the boss is lurking under the surface, a swordfish waiting to skewer anything that moves. The swordfish suddenly shoot up from the water, one of them almost turning Haruka into a kebab. But Angelica darts in and chops them apart before they can skewer him. Catching his breath, Haruka admits that without her he'd already be floating there as sliced sashimi. Realizing how fast the things move, he switches tactics. He uses his ice magic to freeze chunks of the pool, slowing the fish down so they can't zip around as easily. With their speed cut, he picks them off one after another. While he's focused on that, a huge swordfish launches up from below and nails him off guard. Angelica screams a warning, but he's already falling into the water. She's left alone, facing the massive beast until Haruka blasts back up. Standing on a rough wooden board, he whipped up using his carpentry skill like some budget surfboard. The giant swordfish charges again. Haruka rides the waves around it, taps into his dummy skill, and lands a clean hit that opens it up for a finishing blow. With that, the floor boss goes down, and he gets rewarded with a fresh pile of gemstones. He and Angelica keep climbing higher. Along the way, Haruka finds some rare loot, a pilgrim ring that's supposed to bring good luck and keep bad stuff away, a blessed bangle that cancels curses, and a necromancer's elegant orb. Happy with the haul, he hands them all to Angelica, finally breaking the curse and freeing her from the armor that's been stuck to her forever. For the first time, she takes off her helmet. Underneath is a stunning blonde face Haruka doesn't get to see because timing is not on his side. Elsewhere, Tuka's squad pushes through another floor and gets ambushed by werewolves. They manage to beat them, but by the end everyone is worn out. While they rest and talk about how they'll catch up to Haruka, a voice calls from behind. They tense up, thinking it's another enemy, but it's just Marielle and the others. When Marielle finds out Haruka isn't with them, she breaks down crying on the spot. Tuka pulls her close and tells her Haruka isn't the type to fall, that easily he'll find a way through the deepest part of the dungeon. The others are still anxious, tossing around ideas on how to rescue him, but Taka won't let go of her trust in him. Far below them, Haruka steps into a chamber full of lava. The heat and all the non-stop fighting finally start to wear him down, so he listens when Angelica tells him to take a break near the edge. While he's cooling down, he feels a tiny breeze against his face. Curious, he digs into the wall with earth magic and opens a small hole, pressing his face into the airflow like someone leaning into an AC vent. On a higher floor, Toka and her group feel the same draft. They check the wall, break through, and suddenly Haruka's face is staring back at them from the other side. With a bit of digging, they open a small passage and start talking through it. From them, Haruka hears that monsters from the dungeon are pouring out toward Amui. Marielle adds that she saw a second wave heading for town, and that if there's a third, the place might not survive. The only way to stop it, she says, is to take down the dungeon's true master. Haruka laughs and says he already knocked out the boss, shocking everyone. One of them points out that if that were actually true, the second wave wouldn't have happened at all. That's when it hits him the real core of the dungeon isn't the thing he fought before. It's Angelica. He remembers wanting to challenge her when they first met, but hesitating once, he learned how long she's been trapped here, and how she isn't really his enemy. With all eyes on him, he admits he hasn't taken down the actual last boss yet, but promises to come up with a way. Now he's stuck, carrying the weight of both saving the town and not betraying Angelica, but he decides he'll find a path that does both. When some of them question why Toka still trusts him with that much on the line, she answers firmly. Haruka might freak them out and run off on his own, but he's never abandoned them when it counted. Over and over again, he's stepped in to protect and fight for them. That's why she believes he'll pull it off this time too. Hearing that, Haruka tightens his fist. His resolve hardens. He's going to keep Amui standing, protect everyone who's relying on him, and figure out a way to save Angelica from the dungeon at the same time. Near the town, Gaitek and the guild members are still hacking through waves of monsters trying to break through to Amui. While swinging his weapon, Gaitek complains he's completely worn out, but the guildmaster snaps back that even the princess risked her life going into a dungeon she's never seen just to deliver a message. If she can do that, they can't afford to collapse. The guildmaster and his fighters know at this point it all comes down to Haruka and his classmates. They're the only ones deep enough inside to hit the source and shut the stampede down for good. Inside the dungeon, Haruka and Tuka are both climbing on their own routes, each trying to crush as many floor bosses as they can before they link back up. Haruka and Angelica move like a duo that's been doing this for years. He sets up openings with weird tricks. She cuts the bosses down like it's nothing. As they scoop up loot, Haruka tells her he wants to mess around with the gear later, still annoyed he hasn't found the pheromone ring yet. Angelica starts to warn him about pushing too hard, but he assumes she's just telling him to rest and refuses, saying he won't stop until he's seen his friends and climbed higher. By the time they reach floor 69, the vibe changes. A creepy owl floats in the middle of the room. Haruka appraises it and sees it's a Mesme owl, which pretty much screams sleep magic. He locks eyes with it anyway, thinking his stamina will bail him out, but he's already beat from non-stop fighting. His eyelids get heavy, and he drops into a deep sleep. When he wakes up, he's riding on Angelica's back like luggage. Embarrassed, he apologizes for being useless, but she just taps his shoulder lightly and keeps walking, carrying him to the next level without a single complaint. Up above, Tuka's group is stuck in their own nightmare. They're facing the boss of floor 100, a Sphinx. Every hit they land, physical or magical, just closes up and heals as if nothing happened. Someone remembers the briefing. This kind of dungeon Sphinx can't be killed by raw damage. It lives on riddles and tricks, basically making it immortal if you just try to fight it head on. The girls start to panic, realizing they might die here without even putting a dent in it. Tuka clenches her fists, furious that after fighting all the way here for Haruka's sake, they might just get wiped by some broken boss they can't touch. Down below, Haruka finally wakes up properly, feeling his strength back. He notices the wrecked floors around him and senses a monster above that doesn't feel like the usual floor mob. The Sphinx is towering over Toka, ready to crush her until Haruka bursts in. He pulls on his duality gauntlets and merges them with his anti-nullification glove, the one that cancels both physical and magic immunities. With one solid strike to the Sphinx's back, he shatters the effect, keeping it invincible. Angelica doesn't waste the moment. She steps in and lops its head off in a single swing. Tuka goes pink with relief, then immediately snaps at Haruka for making everyone worry again. The others crowd around, cheering because they finally got him back. When Toka asks who the armored knight at his side is, Haruka starts to introduce Angelica, but the floor suddenly collapses. He barely survives the fall using his skills. He climbs back up, tries once more to introduce her, and another trap triggers, dropping the ground out again. This time, his tricks aren't enough. Toka dives forward, grabs him before he falls, and holds on tight, swearing she won't let him slip away from her sight ever again. Haruka just sighs internally. Her clinginess is killing his dream of going full hermit mode. Even so, everyone is hyped. He's back. The mood doesn't last long. A scout rushes in and announces the third wave of the monster stampede is already coming. Fear spreads as they wonder how they're supposed to hold out. Haruka calmly tells them Angelica is the key to turning this around. Tuka and the others stare at him, demanding he explain himself. Muriel cuts in and tells them there's no time to waste. They need to get back to Amui immediately because the city is in serious danger. One of the nerds suggests using the warp gate to teleport back, and Haruka flips out, yelling that no one ever gave him a warp stone. The nerd just laughs and says Haruka's the first idiot to clear the dungeon from the very bottom upward, like a delivery guy, handling your mom from ground floor to penthouse, so of course he missed the normal route. Before they teleport out, Haruka turns to Toka and tells her they can win this. His methods are busted, weird, and risky, but they've carried him this far, and he plans to use those same tricks to finish the fight and save the town. Haruka's group finally reaches Amui's walls, and the guildmaster just stares for a moment, stunned they're still alive. The defenders on the ramparts break into cheers when they see them. The guildmaster starts explaining they barely held off the first and second monster waves, but Marielle cuts in, saying an even bigger swarm is already charging straight toward the city. Inside a church, the local lord packs frightened townsfolk onto benches and tries to calm them by insisting the guild will protect them. Outside, adventurers steel themselves as the real stampede comes into view, a huge flood of monsters of every shape and size, so dense it makes the ground tremble. While everyone tenses up, Haruka glances at Angelica. She quietly draws her sword and drives it into the earth. Power ripples out in every direction. She reveals she's actually the Dungeon Emperor, someone who can command monsters born from the dungeon. Light explodes across the field, swallowing the horde, and when it fades, the entire army has simply vanished. Haruka walks up, bumps fists with her like it's normal, then turns to the stunned guild members and introduces her as the Dungeon Emperor. Panic ripples through the crowd until he explains she's the one who helped him climb through the dungeon in the first place. The scholars huddle together, whispering that if that's true, she must have authority over every dungeon monster. Haruka teases them for stating the obvious and says he personally watched her erase floor bosses like they were tutorial mobs. When someone nervously asks where all the monsters went, he jokes that they've gone home to mind their own business. The tension breaks, and Amui erupts into celebration, relief washing over everyone. A few days later, Haruka rents a big room at an inn and asks Toka to bring the whole class. When they arrive, they find shelves crammed with rare dungeon loot he's hauled back. Haruka announces he's opening a little shop and that they'll have to pay if they want anything, but nobody hears that part. They're too dazzled by the gear. The girls instantly dive into a chaotic bidding war, turning into loot-greedy demons, while the guys huddle in the corner. Feeling bad, Haruka tosses a pile of jewels their way, and they almost cry from how happy they are. He smiles, glad everyone can get stronger using the stuff he found, but deep down he still worries about Angelica trying to adapt after so many years shut away. His classmates are impressed he's selling such rare items at decent prices, and he's quietly thrilled about how much money he's making. Then Tuka visits his room to thank him for saving the town and for how he's treated Angelica. When she asks how they met, he finally admits Angelica was the cursed Dungeon Emperor in skeletal form and that he used his servitude skill on her instead of killing her. Tuka explodes, ranting that he really attached himself to a skeleton girl of all things. Annoyed by his explanation, she declares that Angelica is coming with her so she can get to know the girl properly. After they leave, Haruka starts spiraling again, knowing Angelica has basically zero social experience and might freeze up. Taka brings Angelica to the girls' room, where they start gently asking basic questions. Angelica barely speaks and answers with tiny nods and gestures. Little by little, they realize she's just a normal girl who got stuck in a cursed role for way too long. They understand. Haruka freed her from that fate without taking her life, and Toka decides she's going to look after Angelica seriously from now on. Later, the girls invite Angelica to bathe with them. As they undress, Toka helps her out of her armor. When she pulls off one boot and sees a perfectly human leg, she freezes. The others panic. They all assumed Angelica was still bones underneath. Curiosity quickly wins over shock, and they keep removing the armor piece by piece until a beautiful blonde girl is standing there instead of the skeleton they expected. Around midnight, Haruka collapses on his bed, more annoyed than proud. The pheromone ring he wanted is still missing, so in his mind the whole dungeon trip feels like a bust. His level jumped to 18 and he gained new skills, but all he can think about is Angelica ending the stampede by herself. That sting of jealousy turns into motivation if he wants to stand beside her. He has to train again in the forest where he first got strong. The next day, he stops by a bar and finds Toka and Angelica together. Toka looks tense, worried he hasn't really processed Angelica's real body yet, which makes her feel insecure. Haruka says he's heading back to the forest to deal with a few things, expecting her to block him, but she surprisingly agrees and adds there shouldn't be more stampedes. Noticing how quiet Angelica is, he invites her along. Toka cuts in for a moment, clearly jealous, then lets Angelica go. After a long walk, they reach the woods. The wind and familiar trees calm him. Spotting a straight trail, he decides to test his phase skill. He dashes ahead, then a cliff suddenly appears. He loses control and falls. He lives, but admits he still needs practice. Angelica arrives later, steps on a mushroom, and slips. Haruka catches her and blurts out that she's heavier than he expected for someone who used to be bones. Angelica blushes at the comment. Back at his cave, Haruka heads straight for the bath he built, saying how much he missed it. Half joking, he tells Angelica she can join him, then immediately apologizes when he hears himself. Moments later, a blonde girl with no armor walks into the bathroom, Angelica in human form. Haruka panics until he realizes it's her, and she turns bright red now that he's seen her properly. That night, he tries to talk with her, but it's awkward. She's shy, and he's not any better. When he asks if she can speak, she shakes her head. After so long as a skeleton, her voice barely works. She answers with small gestures instead, and slowly he pieces together her past. The old dungeon emperor was gone, and the rare items he gave her basically brought her back. Haruka realizes he's the reason she's alive like this, so he tells her she doesn't have to follow him and can live how she wants. Angelica clutches his sleeve and refuses to let go, showing how afraid she is of being alone again. Understanding that, he stays and tells a dumb story about a shut-in thrown into another world, making her quietly laugh until she falls asleep. A few days later, Haruka asks Angelica to spar. She accepts, and once they start, she moves with crazy speed, like when she ruled the dungeon. Haruka uses phase to slip around her strikes, impressed with how strong she is now that the curse is gone. Eventually, she clips him on the back of the head and worries she hurt him, but he says he's fine and notes his timing with phase is improving. He promises that one day he'll catch up to her even with his trash skills. After training, he takes her to the river for lunch, shows off fishing with elemental tricks, and they haul in enough fish for a hot pot they share by the water. Haruka and Angelica put the meal together, with him showing her how to slice and prep the fish. Her knife work is awkward at first, but she picks it up fast, and he's low-key impressed at how quickly she gets the hang of it. Once the hot pot is ready, they dig in and don't stop until the pot is completely empty. Haruka leans back, satisfied, almost laughing at the fact he's eating proper hot pot in another world. Later, in his room, Angelica asks him to sit next to her on the bed, then quietly moves behind him and starts rubbing his shoulders. Her massage is clumsy and uneven, but he stays still and lets her keep going, not wanting to crush her effort. She tries harder while he gives her small hints on how to do it better. Eventually, they end up outside under the night sky, sitting together. Haruka tells her to scoot closer and notices how awkward she becomes the moment she's not in battle mode. He gives her a gentle pat on the head, and her face instantly turns red. She stands up and tries to force out words, but nothing comes. Then, Haruka decides to get out some words in bedroom. The next day, rain pours as they head back toward Amui. They run hand in hand through the forest, both going red when they realize it, and let go only when the rain stops near the town. The girls immediately clock how close they look and try to question Angelica about what happened, clearly thinking the ex-skeleton might have gotten a little too close. But Taka cuts them off. Haruka tells Tuka he'll be counting on her again. Then the guys yank him away and start grilling him about what he did alone with Angelica, clearly imagining way too much. Annoyed, he shoves them off. Angelica walks over, clearly nervous, and he gently nudges her to go hang out with the girls while he slips away. Just as he turns his back, she manages to whisper her first word, "Thank you." Haruka stops, stunned, then smiles as she hides her face and hurries back to the others. Watching everyone interact, his classmates, his friends, Angelica trying her best, he realizes they're all carrying their own worries and baggage. But when you've got people beside you, those fears don't feel as heavy. Seeing them getting along, Haruka decides he's going to keep pushing through this weird world, dragging his problems along with him but also the connections he's made. And that's it for today's video, guys. Watch the following video and I will see you in the next one.